Welcome back to Big Red Rant, everybody. We're excited to break down the entire schedule and give you our predictions to the best that we can. And we really wanted to not just come out here and wing it and just tell you, oh, I think, and just sell Kool-Aid, right? We're all drinking the Kool-Aid, and that's fine. But we didn't want to do that type of predictions. We wanted to actually have something behind it. So we've been studying for a while now, figuring out where these other teams are looking like they're going to be. And we're ready to do that. Before we get into it, though, please hit the like button. Now, Gary, like I said, everybody's drinking Kool-Aid. But do you think that we're going to just be able to turn it around because we got this new talent?
Overall, no. Like, I'm drinking a lot of Kool-Aid on a lot of players. But going back and looking, I feel like there's too much of a consensus that we're going to be an improved version of the team we were last year, but we're not that same team. I've said that multiple times through the player preview videos and things like that we've done. But going back and looking, losing close games is what Scott Frost does since he's been at Nebraska. I love Scott Frost, right? Don't get it wrong. I'm not saying like he's a problem or anything. He's got to go. I mean, that's a problem. But over his 44 games since he's been in Nebraska, 25 of those, over half of those games have been decided by one score or less. We've won 5 of those and we've lost 20. We were 0-8 last year. The 3 previous seasons before, we were 5-12, losing 12 of them. So I understand last season was what it was because the schedule was so tough and we played so many, top 25, top 20 teams and played them close. But it's just it just seems to be the thing that he does since he's been here. The big wins are against really bad teams and the bad blowouts are against, the Ohio States and things like that in previous years. When he was at UCF and he had Milton and things like that, they were putting up so many points on teams. There weren't a lot of close games. There wasn't a lot of turnovers. There weren't crunch time decisions, back against the wall, situational football decisions to be made, right? And I feel like since he's been at Nebraska, that's been more and more frequent. And you and I have talked multiple times after a lot of the games, we don't feel like the right decision has always been made. So if Casey Thompson's that guy, because that's the other thing you can go back on is ever since he's been here, it's just been him and Martinez, right? I mean, there's a little bit of coaching changes now. That's one thing that's changed. There's finally a new quarterback. But I mean, we've had different players at different positions ever since he's been here, but it's still the same thing. Going back to that very first game against Colorado, right? So if Casey Thompson and the offense can get out quick on teams and create some big leads that they can maintain, and not give up leads like they did against Iowa last year and several other teams, Illinois, things like that, then I think that's how they're going to turn the corner. I don't think we're bringing back the core of last year and we added some things and some guys in spots that are all of a sudden going to flip the table to where now we're 9-3 instead of 3-9 because we're going to win a bunch of close games. I feel like the only way to fix that problem is to stop being in so many close games.
Well, let's take this one game at a time. Start with Northwestern. We beat the brakes off them last year, and this is a team that I have come to respect the hell out of ever since we joined the Big Ten. What do you think happens this season against Northwestern?
I think it's definitely closer than last year. I think it's a combination of Pat Fitzgerald is Jekyll and Hyde the last few years, from being a really bad team to a really good team. And last year they had a first-year defensive coordinator. He came out and said that the scheme didn't change, that the terminology did, and that was supposedly a big reason why the defense was so bad. They've always been kind of hit or miss on offense, but he's always been at least solid, if not really good, defensive teams, through Northwestern. So I expect them to have, compared to last year, at least a bounce back year. I don't know that they follow the trend of what they've been doing and going from worst in the West to best in the West, but I don't think it's going to be a blowout game. The other side of that is us. You've got a new quarterback, a lot of new system, a lot of new coaches, a lot of other new players. Even if individually the players we roll out this year are going to be better than the players last year, the game on the other side of the globe is going to be the first live snaps those guys all take together. So thinking that all the kinks are going to be worked out and everybody's going to be on the same page with the playbooks, plays are going to be ran, schemes going to be ran real fluid, and everybody's just going to gel right off the bat, I think is a little bit silly, to go in thinking that. It'd be great if it happened. I'm not anticipating it. I'm anticipating a lot closer game. I think Nebraska will win that game. I know coming off of what I just said about they got to stop getting into close games. I don't know that it'll come down to a last play or, a last drive, but I just think it's going to be a little bit closer than the point spread shows, definitely closer than last year's was. And I think they'll win. I wouldn't be shocked either way, to be honest with you.
So we've both got them winning. That's 1-0 for the Huskers.
What do you have win margin? Think it's another blowout? You think it's a lot closer?
I absolutely don't think it's going to be another blowout. I really hate putting my money against Pat Fitzgerald. Like, I respect him so much, and I've seen him do things to the Huskers that I don't want to ever see again. He's just one of those thorns in our side. So it's really tough to imagine this being a blowout. But I think we come away winning. I'm very high on our talent this year. Probably too high. The other thing is, I feel like this could be a good avalanche effect for us. If we can win this game, I think the second and third game are just the tune-up games with North Dakota and Georgia Southern. So that could set us up for an Oklahoma game where we don't know how good we are, and we think, hey, we're 3-0. We had you guys on the ropes last season. Let's move on to North Dakota. Do you know anything about them other than we both expect to win because it should be a tune-up game?
No, and not to be an ass or disrespect or whatever, I didn't do much digging into them, and I did very little with Georgia Southern. We could talk about some of the little things, but I mean, I don't think there's really anybody, even at those schools, that think that that's not going to be 2 back-to-back wins for Nebraska.
So let's just skip that, and we are both moving on to Oklahoma, and the Huskers are 3-0. I assume Oklahoma is going to be 3-0 at that point, or do you know if they have a strong schedule?
Yeah, they have UTEP and Kent State, so I mean, they're pretty, warm-up games. They're going to be 2-0 when they play us. Hopefully we're 3-0, not 1-2. This game, I'm kind of with what you're saying. I expect us to be 3-0, so assuming that we are, I feel like between the hype of the players, the team, everything there, but especially the fans, Nebraska fans especially, I feel tend to overinflate everything. Too big on some of the losses, too big on some of the wins. 3-0 when North Dakota, if Northwestern does pan out to be like they were last year, and Georgia Southern, I mean, you're starting your season with Oklahoma essentially, if that's the case. So I could see there being a lot of hype and being 3-0, too much excitement, and then all of a sudden you run into not just a solid team, but like a legit team that is, in my opinion, going to be much better at quarterback than they were last year when we played them. I know there was a lot of hype with Rattler coming in and things like that, but I mean, I think that was the last game he started, wasn't it? I wouldn't take too much into how close we played them last year. They have a new coach. They're going to have a different look than what we saw last year, but I think their quarterback play is going to be a lot better. And just overall, they have better players than us as of right now. That could change. That doesn't mean that's what's going to show up on that Saturday. But I'm going to have to see some things from Nebraska for a while against real legit competition. I just don't feel that confident saying, oh yeah, they're going to go get it done, basing that off of, again, what happened last year with a different quarterback, a little bit of a different system, not knowing what we're going to have out there.
This is where I get wild, okay? This is where I look like I'm drowning in Kool-Aid. I think we're going to beat them. I am going to put stock in last year, and we're going to be the team who's actually faced a challenge. We've got 2 tune-up games for them. Even if we lose to Northwestern, that might help us to take Oklahoma a little bit more seriously. I just think that they're going to be coming off of 2 easy games. Mm-hmm. We're going to be the first test that they really have. We will have already been tested. We played them really tough that last year, and I think that our players, especially the ones that were here last year, are going to remember that and have the almost taste of victory still on their lips. And we're catching Oklahoma at the perfect time. Maybe they are going to be great with this Clemson defensive coordinator as their coach, but do you think it's going to be by week 3? This is our best chance of beating them before they get in their groove as their first real test.
I don't disagree. There's nothing in the last 4 years, to be perfectly honest, there's nothing that tells me that a team has to be great to beat Nebraska, So, I mean, that's where I keep falling back to is and a lot of the things I'm saying, you could argue the other way and vice versa with what you're saying. I get all that. I'm just saying my
But
gut
have
feeling,
we ever had talent like this?
yeah, 100%. I mean, you could go back and say when Adrian Martinez was throwing the ball like an actual quarterback and not like he was lobbing grenades off of his back leg, and we had guys like, Spielman and Morgan, and all the way up to even when we had Wandale Robinson and McCaffrey who could run. I don't think he could pass like a lot of people expected he could, and why people thought he should be in there. But I mean, there was other things he could do. We've had playmakers, man. We've always been able to get at least good to really good players. We're not pulling in a steady dose of 4 and 5 star guys. But I mean, do we have that now? I mean, we've got some guys that transferred that were recruited as 4 stars, but I mean, their new rating, for whatever value people want to put into that, they dropped in rating before we got them. So it's like, I think that's a little overinflated, but I'm just saying across the board, talent wise, yeah, I don't feel like there's anything crazy with this team. There's hype. There's for sure hype that we have a way more talent, but I hear that every year, and every year by week 5, I'm like, here we go, man. So again,
so you're going to be a stick in the mud. You're going to give us an L.
Yeah.
You're at 3-1. I'm at 4-0. Next, we've got Indiana. What have you got on Indiana for us?
Going into last year, they were a lot of people's, kind of dark horse pick. There was a handful of people saying it'd come down to them at Ohio State to win the East, and there was a lot of hype around at the time their tight end, their wide receiver, things like that. Those guys are gone. I think they were overhyped last year, and I think that the fact that people are just kind of blowing them off like a tune-up game, so to speak, I wouldn't do that, when you're talking about any Power 5 conference team. But I don't feel that they're going to pose much of a threat. If you were supposed to be good last year and you weren't, and then you lost the majority of your production, unless you're going to come out with some stud freshmen and portal guys out of the woodwork that no one's expecting to take off, and they did add some transfer. I mean, I think it's safe to say everybody's added portal guys at this point, but I just don't see them posing much of a threat at all to Nebraska, especially if I'm right and we're coming off of a loss to Oklahoma.
All right. I mean, this is where I really look like a wild boy because I've got us at 5-0. So let me just say that I will not be shocked if we lose one of Oklahoma or Northwestern, because 5-0 feels it feels ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, if we beat Oklahoma, I agree with you that we'd be 5-0. Not to backtrack, but I don't see us losing to Northwestern and that being a good thing as far as all of a sudden everybody's going to get focused and driven and then come out and beat Oklahoma. That'd be cool. That would show a lot of resolve. That would show me more, honestly, probably than being 5-0. I'd rather be 5-0 or 4-0, after the Oklahoma game. But I think if we lose to Northwestern, we create the same effect that happened when we lost to Illinois opening week last year.
So we haven't seen the Rutgers since the COVID year, last game of the season. As you can see, the stands are completely barren here. I got another win, and this is why I'm starting to feel really bad. I'm starting to feel like I'm drunk or something, having a 6-0. 6-0 seems like I'm doing something wrong here with my predictions, but what do you think?
No, I don't think that's crazy. I think a good chunk of people are going to predict that, because honestly, most people are going to, at this point in the season, most people are going to have a 6-0 or 5-1. Most people. You're going to have some that are like, oh, you'll lose to Northwestern or maybe choke another game or something like that. But I mean, Rutgers is the college version of, not to throw everybody a huge curveball, but like my Spurs. They are in full rebuild mode ever since they brought Shiano back through recruiting, and obviously they're doing their thing through transfer stuff now, but it's like he was brought in to kind of redo the program, rebuild it back up. They went from like 3 wins to 5 wins. I think they put a lot of focus on the offensive line. They recruited, I think, 7 offensive linemen and brought in like 4, I think, transfer portal guys to try and help bulk up the line. They like their quarterback. They got Vedral, who we had. I honestly don't think he'll play much. They went with that true freshman last year. They plugged in, so they played a bowl game even though they were under 500. But they ran with that freshman then or whatever. They like him. That's like their guy now that they're excited about, and that's why they put so much focus on the offensive line. Nothing really impressive with running backs, but if you build up an offensive line, who knows what happens with your running game. But I just think overall across the board, the talent is super lopsided in Nebraska's favor.
So you've got us 5-1.
Yeah, and I think at this point in the season it's crazy because I think obviously everybody would agree. I think the back half of the last 6 games of the season are going to be the toughest of the schedule. But I think at this point in the season is where you start to see everything come together. You'll start to know what we have. Are those guys early on? You'll be able to tell are the guys that are super athletic, and then we're hearing all this hype about, are they legit or not? But then as you get weeks into it, you'll start seeing everybody playing together and how the schemes work and everybody fits and can manage their assignments and things like that. I think this is where we kind of start hitting a stride as a team playing cohesively. I don't know necessarily about how great that'll be, but I think you'll start to see things click with Whipple's system. This is a really good game at a really good time for a team that's trying to put things together during the season.
Well, we've got Purdue next, and obviously I'm going with a win here, and so tell me why we're not going to be 7-0 or 6-1 or even 5-2 at this point, 5-2.
Purdue doesn't really run the ball much. They've been either number 1 or number 2 in the last 3 or 4 years passing game. A lot of people keep talking about how they lost their stud receiver, who was the top receiver in the Big Ten. They added a couple receivers, I think, from Iowa through the portal. Their best defensive player was a defensive lineman. They lost him. But they, especially on the offensive side in the passing game, they're fine. They're not accidentally the top receiving team because they had a couple guys and now they're gone and they're screwed. I think they're still going to do that. There's a lot of talk about Nebraska's pass rush and how athletic the DBs are now and things like that. I think there'll be kind of people scratching their heads or kind of questioning that after this game, because there's not a traditional spread out, let the quarterback drop. They'll spread out, don't get me wrong, but it's not like a pro style passing game all the time. They mix it up. They do a lot of stuff off screens and short passes that are kind of substitute for run game. And I think that's going to be hard for the pass rushers to help contain. And I think it's going to be the first kind of more complex passing offense that the DBs are going to see, especially as young as they all are. I think this is going to be another close game that we lose, and I think it's going to be because of that. I think it's going to wear on the defense after a while, unless our offense is really clicking. The offensive line is better, like people think. If those things happen and we can not just go tit for tat with them, but kind of keep their offense on the sidelines longer, put some long drives together, then I think things could be different. I don't have a lot of faith in that until I start seeing it. So I'm taking Purdue in a close game, and this will be another kind of people thinking, oh, here we go again type deal.
That's fair. So next we have Illinois. I know it's really weird for me to sit here and say we're going to beat Oklahoma but lose to Illinois, but there's just something about Brett Bielema that I don't trust. I just feel like he has Nebraska's number. I know that's kind of conspiratorial, but this would be one of the games, like you're saying with Purdue, a team that we should technically beat, that I could see beating us. What do you think?
No, I don't think so. I don't think these guys are beating us. I think their best player last year against us, he got defensive player of the week, was their linebacker. He got hurt in that game. He's gone for the season. He's back. I think they're only bringing back like 3 starters on defense or something like that. The running back's back, 1,000-yard rusher last year. So Bielema, first year last year, fired his offensive coordinator at the end of the season. Didn't like the lack of production out of the offense. Thought they relied too much on the defense. The offensive coordinator was his tight end coach when he was at Arkansas. He talks kind of like Whipple. He's like, we're going to do things that is going to throw defenses off. He wants to get more production out of both passing and rush game and be the kind of like, we're going to throw in running situations and run in passing situations, blah, blah, blah. I don't know that matters. I think, they shouldn't beat us last year. And I know I just got done saying that we're not the same team as last year, but you watch them throughout the rest of the season. It was impressive that they beat Minnesota, but other than that, they were pretty bad. They didn't look very good. I don't think there's anything improvement wise on their side that makes anybody go, oh, Illinois is going to be a team to deal with. And I think this, like you're saying with the Oklahoma game, there's going to be players on that team that remember how Oklahoma ended and be up for that. And I hope you're right, and I don't disagree with that, but I think this one's more like that because they were up bigger in this game. Weren't they up like 17-3 or something like that, 17-6 or 7 or 9 because they had that safety or whatever it was. But they were up bigger. it was the first game of the season that really got the whole season off to a bad start. And it was, kind of like the Michigan State game. Like, you played a pretty decent game, and there was just bad mistakes that cost the game. I think this will be, I don't even think this will be a close one. I think this will be one of the bigger wins of the season, other than maybe Georgia Southern or
I hope so. It'd be really nice to get that Bielema monkey off my back. Minnesota, another team that has had Nebraska's number over the years. What did you get from your research?
They're another team that was going through an offensive coordinator change. DJ Fleck, they had a good season last year, really good season last year. Like I said, losing to Illinois, and they lost to somebody else. They lost to Bowling Green or something like that. And he wasn't happy with the passing game. I mean, they always have a good offensive line. They always have a good run game. They always have a decent defense. They had a stud running back that was hurt last year. He's back. They've got the other guys that came back. I think they've lost 4 starters from their defense, and they had a top 10 defense last year. Like I said, they brought in the offensive coordinator they had back in 2019, when they had, I think, the highest production offense that the school had for sure since Fleck was there. I don't know about before that. They lost some of their defensive line, but they added some guys through the transfer portal. This team and this coach, to me, is kind of what you're saying about like Fitzgerald and Bielema. Ever since we joined the Big Ten, Minnesota's been that team that it comes down to the wire when we win, or they just kind of beat on us throughout the game. And even though it might look close, it never really feels like it's that close. I think they're gonna, if they do improve on that passing game, and you can't just sell out on stopping the run and doing your thing, I think that this will be another loss for us.
Wow, another loss. So what do you have us at now total?
I got us at 6-3 going into the Michigan game.
So I've got us at 7-2. Next, we've got Jim Harbaugh and the Michigan Wolverines. I want to say we're going to beat them, but I don't. My instinct is going the other way. I just feel like they get better talent than us. They've been together for way longer than us. I don't know that we're able to beat them in our first year together with this new coaching staff and all these new players.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's going to happen. Now, saying that, I don't think their defense is going to be as good as it was last year. They lost a couple guys. They lost the guy, obviously. This is kind of the point in the schedule. Actually, I think Purdue is the point in the schedule where I almost want to redo this video because by that point, we've had a tough game in Oklahoma, but we've had enough games to see what's happening and how the team is developing and gelling or not. And if all this hype about the talent and the athleticism of these guys is legit or not. But, like I said, we've had different teams. We just haven't had a different quarterback, and we kind of get the same thing from a lot of these. I don't know that it'll even be really as close as it was last year. I think we're going to lose this game. But if our offense is even just solid, not turning the ball over, can sustain some drives, I think we have a very good chance of beating them, because I think their defense is going to notice a decent drop off from last year. And I think our defense, I don't know that it'll be as good as it was last year because the veterans we lost. But I think it'll be close enough that it won't be a huge, like they're going to gash us for anything.
So for you, we're at 6-4 now. I'm at 7-3. Mighty Wisconsin.
Put me down for 6-5.
The team with our same exact jerseys, but with a stupid W on them. They look like they stole our jersey concept completely. I hate Wisconsin. I remember that game we went to where it was Wisconsin versus Nebraska. We were in Nebraska and we came back. We had Abdullah, Burkhead, and Martinez. And that Wisconsin fan group was so annoying.
We were right by them. We were front row, and they had the whole corner, and you and I were maybe 6 seats from that whole group of them. The cheerleaders were right in front of us.
They were working and jerking us all game and letting us know about it, and then somehow we just came back out of nowhere. That was great. Doesn't seem like that's going to happen this season. I don't know. I'm scared of Wisconsin. They just, once again, have our number. Bigger, stronger, been together longer. Is this another loss?
I think it is, and it's because you can go to Pelini, you can go to Riley, you can go to Frost, and you can go through the gauntlet of Reggie Ball, Melvin Gordon, Jonathan Taylor, James White, and then they're bringing back Braylon Allen, who gouged us for like 230 last year. So their offense has been pretty bad the last 2 years, like consecutive years. They haven't been the typical Wisconsin, but that doesn't matter when they play us because they gouge us for 300 yards on the ground. Their defense is always good. They've got one of the best defensive coordinators in college football. They lost some guys, but I mean, they've got plenty of guys that have game time experience, been in the system long enough. They're going to step in. It's not going to be a huge drop off. Everybody obsesses every year about beating Iowa. And I know it sounds like a pompous or disrespectful thing. I don't consider Iowa a threat. I feel like we've been really bad for a long time. So Iowa's beating us, which they should do. I don't feel like that means much. If we're both good and they were beating us, okay. If they were good back when we were good and beat them every time we played, then okay, that would mean more to me. Where just like it doesn't mean much to me that, you know, we had Eric Crouch and we played them those 2 years or whatever, we smoked them. They weren't good then. You know what I mean? I want to beat Wisconsin desperately. I'm with you. Like, I don't necessarily hate Wisconsin. I actually have respect because even like I said, when they're bad, when they have down years, they manage to still be good enough to not have abysmal seasons like we've been doing. So it's like beating Wisconsin, if they have guys hurt or something crazy going on with their season and they limp in and we beat them, I'm not going to feel great about it. I'll be happy we got a W, don't get me wrong. But I want the same Wisconsin teams that we've been barely losing to, or, you know, have been gouging us for 1,000 yards a game on the ground. I want to come out and beat one of those teams. You know what I mean? Like, that's my milestone that I want us to get to feel like we're starting to turn the corner and push things down the road where they should be going.
6-5 for you, 7-4 for me, and we are down to Iowa.
I say Scott Frost finally gets a W against Iowa.
That's what I want to say, but I didn't want to embarrass myself.
The reason I say that is their offense has been bad for a while now. It's not like there was a stretch of bad or mediocre crop of talent. I think there's a good amount that has to do with the offensive coordinator situation, but they don't get, outside of tight ends, they don't get a lot of the talent that other Big Ten schools get on the offensive side of the ball. They've had some good running backs, but that usually comes from them having good offensive lines. They put offensive linemen in the pros, and Ferentz is a good offensive line guy. But the defense is bringing back some guys. You know, the D-line and the linebackers are still going to be good. They seem to do a good job no matter who they have in the secondary. I'm assuming, again, that they're not going to be able to score much on us. And I think that that's going to wear on their defense more than if it's first half of next to no scoring or field goals or whatever, they're going to wear on us. I think we have more where we can interchange and speed and things like that, where they're more of just a traditional Big Ten type. Every year has been close. You know, even when we were going back and forth in the Pelini days where they would win, we would win, you know, it was close. In these last 4 years where they've beaten us all 4 years, it's come down. I think they've all been within a field goal except for maybe one season. But I think this is the year that they finally get over the hump. I think that takes them to 7 wins, and we finally get to go to a bowl game.
The fact that we almost did it with Smothers last season, and this team is going to be better at quarterback and a lot of other positions, I agree. This has got to be finally the year. And I think it's going to mean a lot to the team. It's going to mean a lot to Husker fans. And I think it will cement this as a successful season. Even take my pie in the sky, this 8-4 that I'm predicting, take that out of it. If we can just beat Iowa last game of the season and not have a terrible losing record, it's up from last year. It's up from where we've been. Do you think that beating Iowa, if we do, is going to be good enough to keep Scott Frost's job?
No, I think having a winning season and going to a bowl game is a huge step in that direction. And I think how the team looks, not just through the season, but as the season's ending. You know, again, kind of to recap it, you've got a lot of new pieces you're putting together. And usually if you had one or two of those pieces you were adding or changing a team, that would be cause for concern. There's multiple situations like that on this team. The whole Iowa-Nebraska thing to me is like, it's not really a thing to me. And I know this is a charge up.
No. Break it down for people. What it boils down to is we're border rivals. We used to be in the Big 12 forever, and we used to smack everybody. And they used to always tell us, oh, you're lucky you're not in the Big 10. You're lucky you're not in the Big 10. And then we fell off a cliff, and then we got in the Big 10, and now they get to smack on us. And it comes across as if maybe they were always right. Maybe even when we were good, they would have smacked us. But we know that's not true. And we just haven't been able to stand on our own 2 feet and ever really fight back. They've caught us at the perfect time.
If we were winning games, if we were winning 9-game seasons, and I know that was kind of the case with Pelini, but we were also beating them then. They were beating us, we were beating them. It was a back and forth thing. But I mean, if we were having just even winning seasons but couldn't beat them, kind of like I said, Wisconsin is, and kind of how Minnesota has been, then I could see there being more of a thing. But it's like your season is hinging, and so much fan-wise is hinging on beating, like last year, a 3-win team. You know what I'm saying? Or like years before of a 5-win team or whatever. It's just like we were a 3-win team with our backup quarterback, and we're beating Iowa pretty much the whole game, and then had a typical meltdown. But we had those meltdowns against Illinois, you know what I mean, and like other bad teams, and that's been the case for multiple years. I mean, okay, if you're on the same level as Illinois or some of these other bad teams that they've managed to lose. I mean, lost to Troy a couple of years ago. The comparison's not there. Like, yes, I will fully admit Iowa has been better than Nebraska for the last 4 years plus, no question. Like, there's no argument. But to act like Iowa now is beating those teams when we were, all the way back to the Big 8, but especially even through the Big 12, like, come on, man, stop. Let's compare apples to apples. You know what I mean? The helmets are the same. That's it. To answer your question, I think this game hinges on bragging rights and shit talking fans amongst fans, right? I don't think that Iowa's not competing for Big Ten titles. Iowa's not, I mean, they start off and they're up there ranking wise, but I mean, they're not playing in significant bowl games or being looked at for playoff or anything like that. I think Nebraska's focus and the things that matter are, how do you do against Michigan? How do you do against Wisconsin? How do you do against Ohio State when you play them, Penn State, things like that? And don't get me wrong, part of getting there is being able to beat teams like Iowa, because Iowa is better than half of the Big Ten, right? They're just not on that top tier. They're kind of that middle step to get back to where Nebraska wants to be. So I'm not just completely knocking on Iowa. I'm just saying that Nebraska has higher hopes than, oh, can we beat Iowa? Like, that's a fan thing back and forth, because like you said, there's a border rivalry amongst, people work with opposite fans and live with opposite fans and things like that. But to answer your question, no, I don't think Frost's job is going to be, saved or lost on an Iowa win. If it comes down to the Iowa game, it's either going to be because he needs that win to have a winning season and make a bowl game, or he loses that game and then it all slips, and then we kind of see from there. But at this point in the season, you've had a good mix of kind of slow played games with Oklahoma thrown in the mix to get your groove, to get your system set, to do everything. Second half of the season, you start playing the better teams that you're going to play, not the better teams necessarily in the Big Ten, but you kind of see what you've got there as the team's gelling and clicking. And this is just kind of, how do you end the season now that all that stuff's together? You don't really have the excuse of, well, we're a new offense, or we've got a new quarterback, we did the scheme for the offensive line, we've got these new receivers. Like, at this point in the season, all that's been set and done. Hopefully this game isn't what hinges on a winning season or a bowl game. Hopefully that's already wrapped up. I think by halfway through the season, we should be real close to being bowl eligible. So I just think this is kind of a end the season on a strong note and go head to a bowl game.
So 7-5 for you, 8-4 for me. You got to admit, that's not as bad as you thought I was going to do.
No, I was waiting to hear 12-0.
Exactly. And I'll be honest, you were not as pessimistic as I thought. The way we talked about it earlier, you made me feel like you were going to have us with a losing season. So not bad all around. Tell us what you guys think in the comments, please. Just write what you think our record is going to be. Thanks for hanging out.